The Terex exploration vessel, *Volaris*, hovered in orbit around a silent, lifeless planet. Its blue and green hues had faded, replaced by dusty brown and gray. The planet, known in ancient records as Earth, was marked as abandoned long ago. Yet the Terex scientists found themselves drawn near, chasing whispers of a species long vanished: humans. Kren, a senior biologist on the ship, stared at the readings on his console. Earth's atmosphere was barely breathable now, but the remnants of human civilization still dotted its surface. Towers, some toppled and others half standing, rose like skeletal remains of a forgotten age. Humans lived here, Kren murmured, his sharp green eyes narrowing. But they shouldn't have been able to. Not with conditions like these. Beside him, Parn, a younger Terex researcher, tilted his head. The archives say humans survived everything their world threw at them. Floods, droughts, plagues, even their own wars. But how could a species so fragile outlast such chaos? Kren didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured toward the screen, where scanners highlighted areas with high concentrations of organic residue. "Prepare a team," he said. "We need samples. I want to see what made these creatures so resilient." On the surface, the Terex team moved cautiously through the ruins. Their sleek metallic suits protected them from the toxic air and the unstable ground beneath their feet. Kren led the group into what seemed to be a former research facility. The building was partially collapsed, its walls covered in strange human markings, symbols, numbers, and faded images. "Here," Kren said, pointing to a sealed chamber. The door creaked open, revealing rows of glass tubes filled with preserved samples. Inside the tubes floated small fragments of what once belonged to humans: skin, muscle, and bone. Parn wrinkled his snout. "They look so ordinary." Kren didn't share Parn's dismissive attitude. He stepped closer, examining the samples. "Ordinary is deceptive," he said. "These beings were anything but." He activated a small scanner, running it over one of the samples. The readings were off the charts. "This can't be right," Kren muttered, double-checking the data. "They're cells. They're more adaptive than anything I've ever seen." Parn raised an eyebrow. "Adaptive? How?" Kren hesitated, then explained. "Their biology shows traces of extreme environmental stress. These cells didn't just survive radiation, disease, and starvation. They evolved to overcome them. It's as if humans were designed to endure." "Designed?" Parn scoffed. "That's impossible. No species is perfect." "They weren't perfect," Kren agreed. "They were flawed. But those flaws, sickness, pain, fear, they didn't weaken them. They made them stronger." The team returned to the ship with the samples, unaware that they had awakened something far more significant. Deep within the preserved tissues, a faint pulse of activity stirred, a spark of life that refused to be extinguished. As the *Volaris* departed Earth's orbit, Kren couldn't shake the feeling that the human story wasn't over. "Fragile," he whispered, staring at the glass container in his hand. "That's what we thought. But maybe we were wrong. Maybe they're the most dangerous species we've ever found." Unbeknownst to the Terex, the humans were not just a memory. They were a warning. Back aboard the *Volaris*, Kren's lab was a hub of activity. Alien machines hummed and clicked, processing the human samples the team had recovered. Kren stood at the center, his hands resting on a glowing console as he analyzed the data flowing across the screen. "Humans," he muttered to himself, his mind racing. "What were you made of?" Parn entered the lab, carrying a fresh batch of analysis reports. "More results," he said, setting the files on Kren's desk. "The samples keep surprising us. It's like their DNA was built to defy logic." Kren glanced at Parn. "Defy logic how?" Parn tapped a glowing panel, and a holographic image of human cells appeared in the air. "These cells regenerate at an abnormal rate under stress. When exposed to toxins, they don't just resist, they adapt. When deprived of resources, they don't shut down. They reorganize themselves to function with less. Kren leaned closer, his sharp green eyes scanning the data. That explains how they survived Earth's catastrophes. Radiation storms, global plagues, they weren't just enduring these events. They were evolving through them. But it gets stranger, Parn added, his voice lowering. Their immune system, it's not just reactive. It's proactive. Kren frowned. Proactive? What do you mean? Parn hesitated, then explained. Their immune system doesn't just fight invaders, it learns from them. Once exposed to a threat, their bodies develop a memory so precise that it can neutralize the same danger faster the next time. Some of these cells even appear to carry traces of pathogens Earth hasn't seen for thousands of years. Kren stared at the data in silence. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. Most species relied on technology or environmental stability to survive. The humans, they had turned their own biology into a weapon. What kind of species evolves like this? Kren asked aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. One that doesn't know how to quit, Parn replied. The conversation was interrupted by an alert from one of the machines. A deep hum filled the lab as a containment pod lit up with a pale blue glow. The human tissue sample inside was shifting, its cells multiplying and reorganizing rapidly. What's happening? Parn asked, his voice tinged with alarm. It's adapting, Kren said, his tone both fascinated and wary. It's responding to the lab environment. Look at the temperature. It's stabilizing its structure to match. Parn stepped back. Should we stop it? Kren shook his head. No, we need to see how far it can go. This could be the key to understanding what made humans so unique. The sample continued to evolve, forming a small, jelly-like structure that pulsed faintly. It seemed alive in a way that no simple tissue sample should. Kren watched in awe as the human cells demonstrated a level of coordination and resilience that bordered on intelligence. For the first time in his career, Kren felt a twinge of fear. The humans weren't extinct. They were dormant. Parn, Kren said, his voice steady but firm. We need to isolate this immediately. If this is what human biology can do on its own, imagine what a living, conscious human could achieve. Parn nodded, but his hands trembled as he activated the isolation protocols. Deep down, both of them knew the truth. They weren't just studying an extinct species. They were uncovering something that could change or destroy their galaxy. In the quiet hum of the lab, the pulsing structure seemed to glow brighter, as if it knew it was being watched. Days passed aboard the Volarus Asterisk, and Kren's obsession with the human biology samples grew stronger. The more he studied them, the more fascinated and disturbed he became. The strange adaptability of human cells seemed almost impossible, yet the data was irrefutable. Humans weren't just survivors, they were conquerors of their environment. One evening, Kren sat alone in his lab, staring at a display of human history, displayed in chronological order. The screen flickered as images of ancient cities, crumbling buildings, and scattered ruins filled the room. Kren could hear faint whispers of human voices, their words recorded long ago. What drove you? He whispered to no one in particular. Parn, having entered unnoticed, stood quietly behind him. You've been staring at this data for hours, Kren. Are you no longer worried about your own species? Kren didn't respond immediately. He was lost in thought, his mind tracing back through the history of Earth. The more he learned, the more a pattern emerged. Humans had survived their planet's harshest environments and worst disasters. Floods, fires, plagues, wars. All of them had come and gone, but the humans endured. It was more than just luck. It was their biology that had made them unyielding. Kren ran his fingers through his hair, glancing at Parn. They didn't just survive, they adapted. Every threat they faced, every catastrophe, they found a way to overcome it. Parn nodded. But how? What makes their biology so special? Kren shifted his gaze to a new image on the screen. Humans fighting wars. Their records showed brutal conflicts, civilizations torn apart. And yet, they always rebuilt. It was as if no matter how many times they were knocked down, they found the strength to rise again. It's their will to survive. Their cells, each one is designed to protect them, to heal, to evolve. When they were pushed to the edge of extinction, they fought back. They fought to live. Parn was silent for a moment. Then he spoke softly. But could a species like that really be destroyed? Kren didn't answer right away. He turned back to the screen and began typing commands into the console. Images of human achievements, space exploration, technological advances, medicine, flashed before him. Their history is a tale of resilience, he said quietly, a species that found a way to survive no matter what. And this, he gestured to the human tissue sample in the containment pod. This is only a glimpse of their potential. Are you saying we're underestimating them? Parn asked, concern creeping into his voice. I think we've already underestimated them, Kren replied. When humans faced danger, they didn't just flee or hide. They studied their enemies, adapted, and came back stronger. They evolved to fight, to survive, and to conquer their own weaknesses. Their biology is a weapon in itself, a weapon that is always changing, always improving. Suddenly, an alert flashed on the console. The sample in the containment pod had grown, shifting once again. The Terek scientists were now witnessing a process far beyond what they expected. It was evolving not only in response to the lab's environment, but also in response to the very nature of the Terek's presence itself. Kren's eyes widened. It's learning. It's learning from us. Parn stepped back, fear beginning to rise in his chest. What do we do now? Kren didn't answer. His mind was racing. The realization had hit him hard. The humans weren't just survivors of Earth's storms. They were capable of something far more terrifying. Their biology could evolve in real time, turning every threat into an opportunity. The Tereks had underestimated them, but it was no longer a simple matter of biology. It was a matter of survival. And now, the humans' resilience was something the Tereks would have to face, head-on. As the hum of the lab continued, the containment pod pulsed again. And deep inside, humanity's greatest strength, its will to adapt and survive, began to stir. The Vulturus asterisk drifted in the silent blackness of space, far from Earth, yet Kren couldn't escape the feeling that something was stirring within the ship. It had been days since the last analysis of the human tissue sample, and the more Kren studied it, the more uneasy he became. The sample, once a simple tissue fragment, had grown, shifted, and responded in ways that made no sense. He sat in his lab, staring at the containment pod. The human cells were multiplying at an alarming rate, adapting rapidly to the conditions around them. It's like it's waking up, Kren muttered to himself. He couldn't shake the nagging feeling that this wasn't just a biological anomaly. The human tissue was learning. Parn entered the lab, his face drawn with concern. The sample, it's acting differently. I know, Kren replied, eyes fixed on the pod. It's not just adapting to the environment anymore. It's responding to us. It knows we're here. Is it dangerous? Parn asked, voice cautious. Kren hesitated. He had always been a scientist, logical, calm. But now, something about the way the cells in the pod were moving made him feel uneasy. It was as if they were conscious of their surroundings, of the Tereks, and of the possibility that they weren't alone anymore. We don't know yet, Kren said, but we need to be careful. This is something more than we've ever seen before. If this sample represents what humans were like, then they weren't just a species. They were something else. As Kren and Parn watched, the cells inside the pod began to reorganize, forming intricate structures that looked almost familiar. They resembled the basic design of a human organism, but there was something different about it. The structure was more resilient, more robust, than any natural organism Kren had ever seen. The cells moved in unison, a strange, coordinated dance, as though they were working together to form something new. Parn's voice broke the silence. It's not just regenerating. It's evolving. It's changing. Kren nodded, his eyes wide with realization. It's like it's being reborn. But this time, it's not the same as before. It's better. Suddenly, the pod's containment field flickered. A burst of energy rippled through the lab, causing the lights to dim for a moment. Kren and Parn froze, staring at the now glowing pod. Inside, the structure that had been forming began to pulse with a faint light. The temperature in the room began to rise. "What's happening?" Parn asked, his voice tight with fear. Kren rushed to the console and checked the data. His hands trembled slightly as he read the results. The sample, it's growing faster than before. It's not just surviving. It's thriving. Parn took a step back. Is it going to wake up? Like a human? Kren didn't know. He wasn't sure what he was dealing with anymore. But the more he watched, the more he realized that the human biology they were studying wasn't just a relic of an extinct species. It was a dormant force, capable of incredible strength and resilience. And now, it was awakening. "We need to isolate it," Kren said urgently. "If this, whatever this is, becomes active, we won't be able to control it. We have no idea what kind of threat it could pose." But as he moved to shut down the pod systems, the light inside flared brighter, and the structure shifted again. It wasn't just tissue anymore. It looked like a living, breathing organism. Kren's heart raced. This wasn't just biology. This was the essence of what made humans so terrifying. Their ability to rise from nothing, adapt to anything, and survive. And now, that dormant power was stirring, ready to awaken. The Volaris asterisk hummed with a nervous energy. Kren could feel it in the air as he paced through the corridors, his mind racing. The human tissue sample was no longer just a sample. It was something far more alive and far more dangerous. The once dormant cells had stirred, growing and evolving with an intensity Kren couldn't have predicted. He had tried to contain it, to study it from a safe distance, but the growth was uncontrollable. Inside the containment pod, the human tissue had reorganized into a complex, muscular structure that seemed almost sentient. Its cells, once passive, now responded to the ship's environment in real time, adjusting and adapting with alarming speed. Kren entered the lab, his steps quick and deliberate. He glanced at the glowing pod, which now housed a form that seemed to pulse with life. "It's alive," he murmured to himself, unable to believe his own words. Parn, standing by the console, turned to face him. "It's not just alive, Kren. It's changing. It's reacting to everything around it. Temperature, light, even our presence." He hesitated, a worried look on his face. "This isn't just a biological anomaly anymore. It's turning into something else. Something powerful." Kren nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. The sample had evolved beyond its original form. It was no longer just a simple piece of human tissue. It was becoming an organism, a living creature. And with each passing minute, it was growing stronger. Suddenly, an alert flashed on the screen. The containment field flickered, a warning sign that the pod's integrity was weakening. Kren's heart raced as he rushed to the console. "We need to stabilize it. Now." Parn's hands moved frantically over the controls, but the pod continued to pulse, growing larger and more defined. Kren stepped closer to the glass, staring at the shape inside. It looked like a human, but its features were sharper, more defined, almost animalistic. The muscles beneath the skin rippled as if ready to spring into action. "It's not just regenerating," Kren said, his voice low and filled with awe. "It's evolving to be stronger. It's becoming a predator." Parn's eyes widened in alarm. "A predator? But this is human tissue. How can it be?" Kren didn't let him finish. "Humans didn't just survive as a species, Parn. They thrived in a world full of dangers, wild animals, diseases, hostile environments. They were apex predators in their own right. And now, this. He pointed to the pod. This is what they were capable of when they were pushed to the edge. The form inside the pod shifted, its body now fully formed. It was humanoid in shape, but its posture was different, more predatory. The creature's eyes opened slowly, revealing a deep, intense gaze that seemed to pierce through the glass. Kren took a step back. There was intelligence in those eyes, a flicker of awareness that sent a chill down his spine. For the first time, Kren realized that this wasn't just an experiment gone wrong. This was the true potential of human biology. Humans have been capable of so much more than anyone had understood. They were not just survivors. They were fighters, hunters, predators in their own right. And now, this dormant power was coming to life. The creature inside the pod began to move, stretching its limbs as though testing its new form. Kren could see the power in its muscles, the speed in its movements. It was no longer just a human being. It was something far more dangerous. "Seal the pod," Kren ordered, his voice sharp. "We can't let this thing out." But as the containment field flared to life, the creature inside the pod reacted. It slammed its fist against the glass, causing the entire lab to shake. The force was incredible, too much for the containment systems to handle. Parn stumbled backward in shock. "Kren, it's too strong." Kren's mind raced. "We're not dealing with a human anymore," he said, his voice filled with a mix of fear and awe. "We're dealing with something far more dangerous, a biological apex predator." The pod shook again, and Kren knew that it was only a matter of time before this creature, this new form of humanity, would break free. The Volaris rocked violently as the creature inside the containment pod slammed against the glass once again. The walls of the lab trembled and the lights flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Kren's heart raced as he watched the pod's protective field flicker and sputter. The force of the creature's blows was far beyond anything they had anticipated. "Parn, seal the pod," Kren shouted, his voice tight with panic. Parn's fingers flew over the controls, but the display showed the containment system was failing. "It's too strong. The glass can't hold," he yelled, fear creeping into his voice. Kren's mind worked in overdrive. If they didn't act fast, the creature would break free, and once it was out, there was no telling how far its strength and adaptability could go. The human cells inside it were no longer simply reacting to the environment. They were evolving in real time, pushing the limits of their biological capabilities. The longer they waited, the more dangerous the creature would become. Suddenly, the pod's glass shattered with a deafening crash. A wave of energy pulsed outward, knocking both Kren and Parn off their feet. The air was thick with the sound of crackling energy and the distant hum of alarms. Kren scrambled to his feet, his eyes locked on the creature now emerging from the wreckage. It was humanoid, but far from ordinary. Its muscles were thick and coiled with power, its movements precise and calculated. The creature's eyes locked onto Kren with an intensity that made his blood run cold. It was intelligent, aware of its surroundings, aware of them. Kren staggered backward. "We need to contain it. Now." But the creature didn't seem interested in staying contained. With a sudden fluid movement, it lunged toward the nearest wall, slamming its fists into the metal and tearing it apart as if it were paper. The sound of tearing metal echoed through the ship as the creature pushed through the wall, creating a large hole that led into the corridor. Parn's voice was frantic. "It's going to get out of the lab. It'll destroy everything." Kren nodded, panic rising in his chest. The creature had just broken free of its containment, and now there was no telling how far it would go or what it would do. It had already displayed a terrifying combination of strength, speed, and intelligence, qualities that made it more dangerous than anything they had ever encountered. Kren's mind raced. He had studied humans and their ability to survive. But this was different. This wasn't just a human surviving in harsh conditions. This was a human evolved into something that was more than capable of surviving and thriving in any environment. and now it was loose. "We need to track it," Kren said, his voice hard with resolve. "It can't be allowed to roam freely on the ship. If it adapts to the environment here, there's no telling what it could become." Parn nodded, still clearly shaken. "But how do we stop it? How do we even contain it now?" Kren paused. There was no simple answer. They had underestimated human biology, thinking it was just another fragile species, but they were wrong. The creature before them was proof of what humanity could become when pushed to the limit. And now that it was free, they had no idea how to stop it. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor as the creature moved swiftly, its every step a calculated stride. Kren glanced at the screen, which was now showing a map of the ship. The creature was moving toward the central engine room, the heart of the Vulrus asterisk. If it reaches the engines, Kren muttered under his breath, knowing the consequences could be catastrophic. Parn's voice was filled with urgency. "We can't let it get to the engines, Kren. We have to stop it before it's too late." But deep down, Kren knew that stopping it might be impossible. They were no longer dealing with a human. They were facing something that had surpassed humanity's limits, and the ship's safety was now in grave danger. The creature's footsteps reverberated through the halls of the Vulrus asterisk, each one a reminder of just how much power it possessed. Kren stood in the control room, staring at the map of the ship as the creature moved steadily toward the central engine room. The cold, mechanical voice of the ship's eye rang out, adding to the growing tension. "Warning. Unauthorized presence detected in restricted area. Initiating lockdown." Kren didn't respond to the AI. His mind was racing. The creature wasn't just walking through the ship. It was hunting. It knew where it was going, and it knew how to get there. Its every move was calculated, as though it had been trained to seek out its prey. "We need to stop it before it gets to the engines," Kren said, voice tense. Parn, still shaken from the creature's earlier escape, nodded quickly. "But how do we stop something like that?" His hands were trembling as he scrolled through the ship's security systems. "It's already tearing through everything in its path." Kren's eyes narrowed. "We don't stop it by force. Not anymore. We need to outsmart it. How do you propose we do that?" Parn asked, clearly frustrated. "It's faster, stronger, and—" "I know," Kren interrupted, "but it's still human biology. It's still driven by survival instincts, and we can use that against it." Parn looked at him, unsure. "What are you suggesting?" Kren thought for a moment before answering. "We need to lure it into a trap, something that will slow it down long enough for us to contain it. But we have to move quickly." The map on the screen showed the creature was now just a few corridors away from the engine room. Kren knew time was running out. "Where are the nearest containment cells?" Kren asked. Parn's fingers flew across the console, pulling up the ship's layout. "There are two, both near the lower deck. But they're not designed for something of this scale. If it gets inside one, we won't be able to keep it in there for long." Kren's mind raced. They didn't have the luxury of time. The creature had already shown its ability to break through barriers, and it was growing stronger with each passing moment. "I'll set up a diversion," Kren said, turning to face Parn. "You get to the lower deck and activate the containment cells. We'll force it into one of them. It might be our only chance to trap it long enough to neutralize the threat." Parn didn't hesitate. "I'll do it." Kren turned and ran toward the control panel, quickly typing in commands to redirect the ship's ventilation system. The plan was simple. If he could alter the airflow, he could send the creature in the wrong direction, away from the engine room and toward the lower deck. As he worked, he couldn't help but wonder how much longer they could delay the creature. It wasn't just a biological anomaly anymore. It was a fully evolved predator, driven by instincts that made it nearly unstoppable. But there had to be something, some way to stop it. The hum of the Vulrus asterisk shifted, and the entire ship seemed to groan under the pressure. Kren knew it wasn't just the creature's strength that was pushing them to the limit. It was the ship's ability to withstand the damage. If the creature didn't stop soon, The asterisk Volarus asterisk might not survive the encounter. Now, Parn, Kren muttered, as the last of his modifications were completed. He prayed that the creature would take the bait. Meanwhile, in the corridor, the creature paused as it came upon a large vent. It sniffed the air, its heightened senses picking up the subtle change in temperature and airflow. With a low growl, it turned and began moving toward the lower deck. Kren watched the creature's movements on the monitor, his breath held. For the first time, it seemed to hesitate. He didn't know if it was the diversion or just the creature's unpredictable nature, but he knew this was their chance. Parn, it's moving toward the trap, Kren said, voice filled with urgency. You need to be ready. Parn was already halfway to the lower deck, his every step a rush to get there in time. I'm almost there. Just keep it distracted. Kren swallowed hard, knowing the real test was about to begin. Would the trap work? Would the creature be contained long enough for them to stop it? Or would the human biology they had underestimated become too much for them to control? As the creature drew closer to the trap, Kren knew one thing for sure. The hunt was just beginning. The air in the lower deck of the asterisk Volarus asterisk was thick with tension. Kren stood at a distance, watching through the security monitors as the creature approached the trap. His heart pounded in his chest. They had managed to lure it into this corridor, but the real challenge was just beginning. Parn, are you in position? Kren's voice crackled through the comms. I'm ready, came Parn's shaky reply. But this thing, it's not like anything I've ever seen. It's too fast, Kren. If we fail, there's no way we can stop it. I know, Kren said, his voice firm. But we don't have a choice. We have to stop it here. Parn's voice came through again, strained but determined. The containment doors are ready. I just need you to trigger the lockdown sequence. If it steps inside the cells, we can trap it for good. Kren stared at the creature's movements on the monitor. It was just a few feet away from the containment cells now, its every step measured and deliberate. It had learned to anticipate their moves, to read the ship's layout, as if it had been studying them from the start. But this time, it was walking into their trap. The creature hesitated at the threshold of the containment room, as if sensing something was amiss. Kren's heart skipped a beat. Had it figured out the plan? Was it going to turn back? Now, Kren, Parn urged through the comms. Without a second thought, Kren punched in the lockdown sequence. The doors to the containment cells slammed shut with a loud metallic clang, trapping the creature inside. For a moment, everything was still. The only sound was the humming of the ship's engines, the silence hanging heavy in the air. Kren and Parn watched the screens in anticipation, holding their breath. The creature stood in the center of the cell, its glowing eyes scanning its new surroundings. It had been caught, but Kren wasn't ready to celebrate yet. The creature had proven time and time again that it could adapt, that it could break through barriers. Then, without warning, the creature let out a guttural roar. It slammed its fists into the walls of the containment cell, sending violent tremors through the ship. The walls groaned under the pressure, but they held firm, at least for now. Kren clenched his fists. It's still trying to break free. We don't have much time before it gets through. Parn's voice was urgent. What now, Kren? How do we stop it for good? Kren didn't have an answer. The creature was unlike anything they had ever faced, and its strength was growing by the minute. It was no longer just reacting to its environment. It was actively searching for weaknesses, testing every inch of the cell. They had trapped it, but Kren knew that its biology had evolved far beyond anything that could be contained with simple walls. I don't know, Kren admitted, but we can't let it out. Not yet. Suddenly, the lights in the containment room flickered. The creature had found something, a weak point in the walls. It began to dig into the seams, tearing away at the metal with its bare hands. Kren's eyes widened. It's getting through. Parn, we need tow. Before he could finish, the ship's alarms blared, warning of a breach in the containment cell. The creature had broken through the first layer of metal, and now it was coming for the second. Kren's mind raced. They couldn't keep it trapped here forever. If it escaped the containment room, it would be free to wreak havoc on the entire ship. Parn, start the emergency protocols, Kren ordered. We'll need to redirect all the ship's power to the containment field. It's the only way we can hold it in place long enough to figure out a solution. Parn was already moving. I'm on it. But Kren, this might not work. The creature is too strong. The ship might not survive the strain. Kren swallowed hard, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. We don't have a choice. If we don't stop it now, the ship is as good as gone. The creature roared again, its power reverberating through the ship. Kren could feel the walls shaking beneath his feet. They were running out of time. The countdown had begun. As Parn worked frantically to activate the emergency systems, Kren couldn't help but think back to when they first started studying human biology. They had underestimated it. They had underestimated what humanity was capable of. And now, the result of that oversight was standing before them. An evolved, unstoppable force. This wasn't just the end of their mission. It was the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's legacy. And whether they liked it or not, they were going to have to face the consequences of their actions. The ship trembled violently as the creature's roar echoed through the corridors of the *Volaris*. Kren could feel the walls vibrating beneath his feet, a constant reminder of just how powerful the creature had become. The emergency systems were online, but would it be enough? The power needed to hold the containment field in place was pushing the ship's systems to their limits. Parn, how much longer? Kren's voice was sharp, filled with urgency. I'm almost there. Parn's reply was breathless, fingers flying over the console. I've redirected the power to the containment field, but if the creature keeps pushing, we won't be able to hold it for long. Kren watched the monitors, his eyes fixed on the containment room, where the creature was struggling against its restraints. It had already broken through the first layer of the wall, and now it was tearing into the second. Every hit it made sent shockwaves through the ship. Time was running out. There's got to be a way to stop it for good, Kren muttered to himself. He thought back to everything he had learned about human biology. He had studied their adaptability, their resilience, but he had never imagined it would lead to something like this. This creature, born from human cells, was no longer just a product of evolution. It was a force of nature. Parn glanced up at the security monitors, his face pale. It's breaking through. We're not going to make it unless we do something drastic. Kren's mind raced. We've already done everything we can. The creature's biology is too advanced. If we try to stop it with force, it'll tear us apart. What else is there then? Parn demanded. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything. Kren knew Parn was right. The *Volaris* was a ship built for exploration, not for combat. It wasn't designed to withstand the kind of destruction this creature was capable of. But then an idea struck him, a desperate idea. It was a long shot, but it was all they had left. We can't stop it physically, Kren said, his voice low. But what if we gave it a choice? Parn looked at him, confusion spreading across his face. A choice. Kren nodded slowly, his mind forming a plan. This creature is still, in a way, human. It has the same survival instincts, the same need to preserve itself. What if we offered it a way out, one that appeals to its instincts? Parn's eyes widened. You mean, negotiate with it? Kren shrugged, his face grim. Not negotiate. But if we can convince it to stop its rampage, maybe we can regain control. If it sees that we're offering it a chance to survive, to escape, it might just take it. But how do we even communicate with it? Parn asked, clearly skeptical. We don't, Kren said. But we can make it clear that its only way out is through us. We need to use the ship's systems to project an emergency evacuation signal, a false one. The creature knows how to survive. It will understand the signal as a way to get out, and it will follow it. Parn stared at him for a moment, then slowly nodded. It's risky, but at this point, we don't have a choice. Kren rushed to the control panel, quickly programming the false signal. The ship's internal alarms blared one final time as the evacuation signal flooded the system. On the monitors, they watched as the creature paused in its assault. Its head tilted slightly, as though processing the new information. For the first time, it stopped attacking. "It's reacting to this signal," Kren said, his voice filled with hope. "It's listening." They both watched, holding their breath, as the creature hesitated. Then, with a swift motion, it turned and started moving toward the source of the signal, away from the engines and the heart of the ship. Kren exhaled sharply, his heart pounding. It worked. It's leaving. But the creature wasn't just leaving the area. It was heading toward the outer airlock, the one that led into the cold vacuum of space. "No!" Kren shouted, realizing what was happening. The creature wasn't just escaping. It was choosing to leave the ship altogether. The creature's figure grew smaller as it moved toward the airlock. It had reached its decision. No longer driven by instinct to destroy, it had made its choice to survive on its own terms, even if it meant facing the unknown of space. The airlock doors opened, and the creature stepped into the cold, endless void. Kren watched in silence as the creature disappeared into space, his mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. They had stopped the immediate threat, but at what cost? Parn stood beside him, his face a mix of relief and sadness. "It's over, Kren. We did it." But Kren knew the truth. The creature was gone, but the consequences of their actions would linger long after the Volarus asterisk was safe. What they had unlocked was a terrifying new chapter in human biology, one that could never be erased.